All right, so in this lesson, we're going to talk about function notation and how to evaluate a function. Okay, so there are learning targets. All right, before we get going, I want you to take a look at this picture. The person in that picture is 6'4". How tall do you think that lamp post is? We'll pause here. All right, so again, as I mentioned, we're going to determine and learn today what function notation is, and then we're going to talk about how to evaluate a function. Okay, so what is function notation? So function notation, right here, this is function notation. This is read f of x is equal to 5x plus 7. And it is the same thing as saying y equals 5x plus 7. So this right here, this f of x is how we say it. It does not mean f times x. It just really means it's another way of saying y. So these two things mean the same thing. And so then you might say, well, why the heck do we even use this f of x thing, this function notation, if that's the case? The reason is, a lot of times when you get into higher level math, we start to have really, really big functions. In other words, this gets really, really long. Or you might have a bunch of functions, like 7 or 8 of them, and you want a quick way to name them. So, for example, if I look down here at the bottom and I say, all right, I've got these, each of these are the same, right? They mean the same thing, okay? But if I said, hey, I want you to look at the h of x function, you know to look right here, okay? But if I said, look at the y function, that could mean this one, it could mean this one, it could mean this one. So then the only way I could explain it even further was I'd have to say the whole thing. All right, I want you to look at the y equals x squared minus 4 function. That takes longer. So really, one of the benefits is this is just a quick way to abbreviate a function. So that is really one of the main reasons we use it. You'll see another reason later, but again, the main takeaway from function notation is it's really, these two things mean the same thing. That's really, so when you think f of x, it's really the same as y, it's your output. Okay, so again, if you put something in, put it into a function, you get something out. So this function, if you put in 6, it takes that, multiplies it by 5, and so then you would get 30 out. All right, so how does this work? Well, there are a couple of things to consider. This says to evaluate each function at the given values. So here's our function, f of x is equal to 9x minus 8. They want us to find f of 3. Notice what they did is they just took this x and they replaced it with a 3. So really, that's what we're going to do in this part. Wherever I see an x, I'm going to replace it with a 3. And I'm going to always put it in parentheses. Okay, so now what you're going to do is you are going to pull up your graphing calculator, your MCA calculator. So that's this one. And I'm going to do this. I'm going to do a split screen so we can kind of see a little bit better what's going on. So I want to make this a little bit. Okay, so now I'm just going to type in this part right here, exactly the way I wrote it. So I'm going to go, that's the nice thing about this calculator. So I want you to use this calculator when you're doing your assignment. You're just going to go 9, parenthesis is up there, 3, close the parenthesis, like that, and then minus 8. And you just press enter, and so now I get so I get 19. So that means, how do I write my answer over here? I'm going to make this a little bit bigger again. Okay, so how do I write my answer over here? What we're going to do is we're going to write f of 3 equals, and we said that was 19. Now here's the second reason why it's beneficial, function notation. Now I know what I put in, my input, and I also know what I got out. So I know x was 3, and my output 19 is my other part. So those are my two values. If you were to write an ordered pair, that would be 3, 19. So that's the second benefit of function notation. All right. So now over here, this says f of -5. So now I'm going to take that same function right here, and I'm going to replace x with -5 this time. So I'm going to write f of -5 equals 9 times, in parentheses, -5 minus 8. Okay, so now I'm going to do that on my calculator. All right, so here we go. Now I'm going to type in this just the way I did before. So 9 times, now the negative button is at the bottom. It's below the 3 there, so I just pressed it. It's in red. -5. If you press -5 there, your calculator will give you an error. So now it says 9 times -5, and now I want to do the -8. Press enter. I get -53. So over here, I'm going to write f of -5 equals -53. And there we go. Okay, and that's my answer to that problem. All right. Let's go back to this. All right, so now, what if I have fractions in here and I have some weird things like this? This is, now notice this function, it says g of x, okay? Same thing, it really just means g of x just means y, but our function says 9 4 x plus 42. Okay, so then they want us to find g of -24. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna write it first. So g of -24 equals 9 4 times, so I'm going to put that in parentheses, -24 plus 42. Okay, now that is going to go into my calculator, this part right here, just the way I wrote it. So if you write it correctly, you'll be just fine. All right, let's do that. And I'll make this a little bit bigger so we can see. So now I'm going to, now when you do fractions, just put them in parentheses. So I always put the fractions in parentheses just to be safe. So I'm going to go 9 divided by 4, that's what that means. And then another parenthesis, -24, and then plus 42. So that's the only thing with parentheses, or with fractions to be aware of, is just put them in parentheses. And so now when I do that, I get -12. So over here I'm going to write g of -24 equals -12. Okay. So that part's done. Make this a little smaller again. Okay, so now they also want us to find g of 13. So let's write it out first. G of 13 equals 9 4 times 13. Okay, again, wherever I see an x, I'm replacing it with 13 in this case. Plus 42. Plus 42. Okay, kind of running out of room there, but I'm going to type that in now. Here we go. Okay, so 9 divided by 4 in parentheses times 13 plus 42. And this time I get 71.5. So I'm going to write g of 13 equals 71.25. Okay, you can see this calculator makes it pretty easy. Okay, so then there's really only one other kind with these that can be a little tricky, and that's one of these types of problems where you'll see a bunch of terms, in this case 3 different terms, and it says c of x is equal to negative 11x squared plus 15x minus 2. Okay, so it sounds complicated. It's not that bad. All right, all we're going to do, c of 4, is we're going to, wherever I see an x, I'm going to put it in parentheses, and I'm going to replace it with a 4. So a 4 is going to go here, and a 4 is going to go right there, in 2 spots this time. So I'll have negative 11 times 4 squared plus 15 times 4 minus 2. So a really important step is to write it correctly. Now all I have to do is type this into my calculator, and I've got my answer. Okay, so let's do it. Okay. All right, so now here it is. So negative 11, so I'm going to go use that negative at the bottom there. Negative 11, parenthesis 4, close it. Now you're going to do squared. The squared button here is on the left, right there, highlighted in red right now. Okay, that's where you find the squared button. Then you're going to go plus 15 times 4, so in parentheses like that, and then minus 2. Notice I hit the minus button there, not the negative button. Okay, and now just press enter. We get negative 118. So this is c of 4. Oops. I don't know why I did that. C of 4 equals negative 118. All right, and we've got it. Okay, so now, same thing here. All right, let's make this a little bigger here. All right, so now c of negative 8. I think I'll change colors here. So c of negative 8 equals negative 11 times negative 8 squared. I'm going to give myself a little extra room down here. Okay. Plus 15 times negative 8, and then minus 2. Okay, so I need to figure out what does this equal? All right. Okay, here we go. I got negative 11 times negative 8 squared. Notice I hit the negative button for both of those. Plus 15 times negative 8 minus 2. Enter. We get a big number, but that's okay. C of negative 8 equals negative 826. And again, this is how you want to write your answer always. There we go. All right, that's how you use your calculator. I'm going to close that out. Okay. This was my answer for this one. All right, lastly, let's talk about graphs. So sometimes you'll be given a function and it'll be given in a graph form. So this graph right here, okay, is f of x. Okay, now they want us to find f of negative 4 is the first one. Remember, they replaced this number. This was x. So we're going to say, where is x negative 4? So that's this. Here's where x is negative 4, right there. Okay, so that means at this spot, it touches the graph right there. Okay, so now I want to say, what is the y value or the output at that spot? So you just kind of look over here. What number is that? That would be 1. So this is equal to 1. Okay, now let's do 2. So find where x is 2. So here's where x is 2. Okay, where does that intersect the graph? Right here. Okay, so now you want to look over here at the y-axis. What value is that on the y? So let's see, that's -1, -2, -3, -4, and -5. So this is equal to -5. Okay, and then lastly, 0. So I want to find where is x equal to 0. Well, that's this line right here. It's actually the y-axis. Where does that intercept our graph there, our line? It's right here. Okay, now what's the y value there? -1, -2, -3. And that's how you use the graph to evaluate a function. You can just kind of look and then look at the y-axis. Okay, I hope that makes sense. Re-watch any parts that you're confused on to help you out. And then go ahead and get working on evaluating functions. Make sure you use your MCA graphing calculator to help you. All right, see ya.